I don't know when exactly things started to feel off, but I felt it. You always do when the person you love changes right in front of you. Lydia, my wife of 7 years, used to be someone I could read like an open book. Now, she was a mystery that laughed at texts she wouldn't let me see, a mystery that suddenly cared about her makeup before heading to work meetings, a mystery that kept turning away when I kissed her goodbye. At first, I brushed it off. Work stress, maybe? A new group of friends? But deep down, I already knew. Something wasn't right. And then the first real sign came. I was clearing out the car one evening, just throwing away receipts, food wrappers, the usual junk. That's when I found it. A folded-up receipt from Lou Rev, the kind of restaurant you take someone special to when you want the night to be unforgettable. Candlelight, expensive wine, a violinist playing softly in the background. The problem? I'd never been there with Lydia. $210.45. A dinner for two. A very nice dinner for two. I stared at it for a long time, my stomach twisting. Maybe it was a work dinner. Maybe she went with a friend. Maybe. But then I saw the date. Last Friday. Last Friday, when she told me she had a late shift at work. That was the moment I knew. I didn't say anything right away. I forced myself to stay calm. I needed more than a gut feeling and a single piece of paper before I made any accusations. So, I started watching her more closely. The way she angled her phone away from me. The way she started locking it when she never used to. The way she suddenly had to step outside for better reception whenever she got a call. I told myself I was being paranoid. Until one night, when she came home and went straight to the shower, leaving her phone charging in the bedroom. Unlocked. I stood there, staring at it. My hand was shaking. I knew I shouldn't invade her privacy, but damn it, she was hiding something. And I needed to know. I picked it up, and what I saw made my blood run cold. Mark, can't stop thinking about last night face-blowing a kiss. Mark, you look so gorgeous in that dress. I wanted to rip it off you right there. Mark, next time I place? No more sneaking around. My fingers tightened around the phone. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. I scrolled up. It wasn't just one night. It had been going on for months. And Lydia, my wife, was giggling at his messages, gushing about how exciting it all was, telling him how much she missed him, how she couldn't wait to see him again. And I was just nothing. I put the phone back before she got out of the shower. I went to the living room, sat down, and stared at the wall. The rage I felt in that moment, indescribable. But I didn't confront her. Not yet. If she thought she could make a fool out of me, she had another thing coming. Because I wasn't just going to catch her. I was going to destroy her that I didn't sleep that night. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, my mind running in circles. Lydia was right next to me, sleeping peacefully, completely unaware that I knew, that I had seen everything. I wanted to wake her up right then and there. I wanted to throw her phone in her face and scream, "Who the hell is Mark?" But I didn't. That would have been too easy for her. She'd cry. She'd lie. She'd make excuses. No, I needed something better. Something she wouldn't see coming. So I waited. The next morning, she acted like everything was normal. Gave me a quick peck on the cheek before rushing out the door. Off to work. I watched her leave, my jaw clenched so tight it hurt. I wasn't just going to expose her. I was going to make her regret ever thinking she could play me for a fool. The first step? Gathering proof. I started small, checking her phone whenever she left it unattended, screenshotting messages, logging into our shared phone account to check her call history. But I needed something solid, something undeniable. So I did what any betrayed husband would do. I followed her. That Friday, she told me she had another late shift. I nodded, pretending to believe her, and kissed her goodbye. Then, the second she was out of sight, I grabbed my keys and got in my car. She wasn't going to work. She drove straight to a fancy hotel across town. My hands tightened around the steering wheel as I watched her get out, her phone clutched in her hand, texting someone. Probably him. I parked a little farther away and waited. 5 minutes later, a car pulled up, and out stepped Mark. Tall, well-dressed, smug as hell. I watched as Lydia ran up to him, throwing her arms around his neck, laughing like a damn schoolgirl. That was all I needed. I snapped a few pictures with my phone, my heart hammering in my chest. This wasn't just texts anymore. This was real. This was proof. But I wasn't done yet. I needed to make it hurt. Because this wasn't just about cheating. This was about humiliating me. About lying to my face while giggling at some other man's messages. And I knew exactly how to get her back. Lydia had been obsessing over a big work presentation. Some huge client deal that could land her a promotion. She'd been preparing for weeks, practicing in front of the mirror, stressing over every little detail. It was everything to her. And that was going to be my stage. She wanted to sneak around behind my back? Fine. But she wasn't going to see what was coming next. I spent the entire weekend thinking, planning. Every time Lydia smiled at me, every time she touched me like nothing had changed, it only fueled the fire burning inside me. I wasn't just going to confront her. That would let her play the victim, let her cry and beg and spin her lies. No, I wanted her to feel the exact kind of humiliation and betrayal I felt. And her big work presentation was the perfect opportunity. She had been talking about it nonstop for weeks. It was her chance to impress the higher-ups, to prove she was ready for a promotion. The CEO himself would be there, along with the entire executive team. I was going to turn that moment into her worst nightmare. But first, I needed more leverage. Step 1. Digging deeper. I started checking her laptop whenever she wasn't home. It was easy. She trusted me enough to never log out. Emails, work schedules, texts synced from her phone. And that's when I hit the jackpot. She and Mark weren't just sleeping together. They had plans. I can't wait until we don't have to sneak around anymore. Just a little longer. After the promotion, I'll have more freedom. He's so clueless. I almost feel bad, almost. That one made me see red. Almost. She almost felt bad for sneaking around with this guy while laughing behind my back. I took screenshots of everything and sent them to myself. Step 2. The letter. I wasn't going to out her in some loud, dramatic scene. No, I wanted cold, undeniable evidence delivered in a way she couldn't talk her way out of. So I wrote a letter. I printed out the texts, the emails, the pictures I took at the hotel, everything. I put them all together in a neat little folder and wrote a short, brutal letter to go with it. Dear Lydia, I was going to surprise you at your big presentation today, but I see now that you've been surprising me for months. Mark seems like a great guy. After all, you almost feel bad about betraying me. Almost. I thought you deserved a real surprise today. So I've made sure that by the time you read this, everyone in that meeting will know exactly what kind of woman you are. Enjoy your big moment. Your clueless husband. I sealed the folder and set it aside. Then I emailed every single document to her boss, her CEO, and her entire executive team. Step 3. The delivery. The morning of her big presentation, she was all smiles, nervous but excited. I kissed her on the cheek like usual, watching as she grabbed her laptop bag and rushed out the door. She had no idea. I waited a few hours, then drove to her office. The receptionist was easy to get past. I just said I was here to drop off some important document for Lydia. She smiled and told me she'd make sure Lydia got them before the presentation started. Perfect. I walked out of that building, smiling for the first time in weeks. Lydia was about to have a presentation she'd never forget that tea took about an hour after I left her office for the storm to hit. I could almost hear it from where I was sitting. The chaos. The stunned silence followed by frantic whispering. The door to Lydia's office slamming open, followed by her boss storming down the hallway. The quick, almost panicked shuffle of her co-workers, all trying to figure out what had just happened. By the time I pulled into the driveway at home, I already knew. I had won. I sat there in my car, my hands on the steering wheel, feeling a sick kind of satisfaction wash over me. Lydia would be standing in front of her boss, her coworkers, her entire company, holding that folder in her hands, reading my letter, and seeing all the texts, the pictures, everything. It would be clear as day what she had done. She would have nowhere to hide. I took a deep breath, then turned off the engine. I walked inside, calmly opening the door, and set my keys down on the counter. I didn't have to wait long. About 20 minutes later, I heard the front door slam open. Lydia rushed in, her face pale, eyes wide with panic. She looked like she'd been punched in the gut, and honestly, it felt pretty damn good. She didn't even speak at first, just stood there, her breath shallow, eyes darting around the room, probably looking for an escape. Then, she finally said it. The one thing I've been waiting for. You sent it to them. Her voice was shaky, broken. and I could tell that for the first time, she was starting to realize the gravity of what she had done. I didn't answer her right away. I let the silence stretch out, let the weight of her own actions hit her. And then I just said, "You should have thought about that before you decided to turn our marriage into a joke." She swallowed hard, taking a step toward me, her hands shaking as she reached out. "Please, I didn't mean for it to get this far." I held up my hand, cutting her off. "No, don't. Don't even try. You made your choices. You think this is some kind of misunderstanding? You think that I wouldn't find out? You think I wouldn't notice you sneaking around?" She shook her head, tears starting to fill her eyes. "I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you. It was just so easy with him. He understood me in a way you didn't." "Easy," I repeated, my voice growing colder. "You think I'm some kind of idiot, Lydia? You didn't just cheat. You've been planning this. You've been lying to me for months." Her tears began to fall, her makeup running down her face as she tried to wipe them away. She looked like a damn mess. And that felt good. I couldn't lie about it. She deserved it. "Please, can we just talk about this? Can we fix it? I never wanted to hurt you. I swear Fix it," I scoffed, shaking my head. "No, Lydia, there's no fixing this. You don't get to do what you did and then ask for a fix." She collapsed onto the couch, her sobs muffled by her hands. But all I felt was rage, pure, raw rage. Because this wasn't just about betrayal. This wasn't just about the affair. It was about everything. All the lies, the manipulation, the time I wasted loving her while she played me for a fool. But I couldn't just stand there listening to her sob. It wasn't enough to just let her feel the weight of what she'd done. I needed to make sure she never forgot this. And that's when it hit me. I didn't just want her to feel guilty. I wanted her to see how much she had destroyed. "I hope you're ready for the fallout, Lydia," I said, my voice low-cold. "Because it's just beginning." I could tell Lydia was spiraling. She was shaking, her hands clutching at her dress like she could somehow hold herself together. But the reality was sinking in. The damage was done, and she had nowhere to hide. I let her cry for a little while, but I was done playing the nice guy. She had already shattered any illusion of trust we'd had, and now it was time for her to face the consequences. I grabbed my phone and checked the time. Her presentation would be over in about an hour. It wasn't enough to just leave her feeling devastated in the privacy of our home. No, Lydia needed to face the truth in front of everyone. I sent a message to a few people I knew from her office, some friends, some acquaintances, people who deserved to know. I wasn't being petty, I was being honest. They needed to know the woman they worked with was a liar, a cheater, and someone who thought she could get away with anything. I forwarded them the photos, the emails, the texts. And I didn't just stop there. I went a step further. I posted a public status on our company's internal social network. It wasn't visible to the general public, but it was enough. I wrote, "To all my colleagues at company name, it's been a pleasure to work alongside you these past few years. I hope you all find success and happiness. I just want to make sure you all know what kind of person your colleague Lydia really is. She's been having an affair with a man named Mark for months. I guess all that talk about work-life balance was just code for sneaking around behind her husband's back." I hit post before I could second-guess myself. It was out there. I leaned back in my chair, trying to keep my emotions in check. But inside, there was a twisted kind of satisfaction growing. She had tried to destroy me with her betrayal, so now it was my turn to destroy her reputation. Let the office know exactly what kind of person they were dealing with. Lydia came back into the room, still sniffling and wiping her eyes. She had already tried calling a few of her friends. I could tell by the way she kept glancing at her phone. She was looking for someone to console her, someone to fix things. But there was no fixing this. Not for her. She took a deep breath, trying to compose herself. "What did you do?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, like she was already starting to put the pieces together. I didn't answer. Instead, I pulled my phone out and showed her the post. Her face drained of color as she read it. Her mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. I can't believe you," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Oh, believe it," I replied, my tone flat. "I just made sure everyone knows exactly what kind of person you are. It's not just about you and me anymore, Lydia. It's about the lies you've been spreading at work, about all the people who trusted you." She stumbled back, almost like she was physically pushed by the words. Her eyes went wide with horror as she pieced together what was happening. "They're all going to know, aren't they?" she said, her voice breaking. I didn't feel sorry. I didn't even feel bad. "Yes, they're all going to know. Your little secret's out." For a second, Lydia looked like she was about to collapse. But then she stood up straighter, wiping the tears away as if she was trying to pull herself together. "You think this is going to fix anything? You think this makes you look better?" I chuckled, though there was no humor in it. "No, Lydia, this doesn't fix anything. But you've taught me something. You've taught me that nothing I ever gave you was enough. So now, I'm giving you something you deserve. Consequences." I didn't wait for her to reply. She had nothing left to say. I walked past her, heading toward the front door. "I'm done," I said without turning back. And I left, and I didn't go far. I needed to give Lydia space to process, to let her stew in the mess she'd made. But part of me wasn't satisfied. I'd done the public part, humiliated her in front of her coworkers, let her see just how far I was willing to go. But there was still something inside me that needed to see her face the full weight of her actions. I spent the next few hours driving around, trying to clear my head, but I couldn't stop thinking about her. Lydia had always been my world. I didn't just love her, I trusted her. I trusted her more than anyone. And she had torn that apart for some cheap thrill with Mark. By the time I pulled back into the driveway, the anger had settled into something colder. Indifference. I wasn't hurting anymore. The pain had turned to stone inside me. But I needed to see her one last time. When I walked in, the house was eerily quiet. Lydia was sitting on the couch, her face pale and still tear-streaked. She didn't look up when I entered, but I could feel her eyes on me, heavy with shame and regret. "You don't get to look at me like that," I said coldly. "After everything, you still think you can feel bad for yourself? What, now you're sorry? Because you're getting the consequences you knew were coming?" She finally looked up, her eyes red from crying. "I didn't know it would go this far. I didn't mean to hurt you, really, I didn't." I cut her off with a harsh laugh. "Didn't mean to? You think that excuses this?" I waved my hand toward the empty space between us. "You didn't just cheat, Lydia. You destroyed everything. You betrayed me with someone who has no more respect for you than he does for himself." "I love you," she yelled, standing up now, desperate. "I always have. I lost myself for a while. Mark, he made me feel special again. But that doesn't mean I don't love you. I swear." I stood still, staring at her, my jaw clenched. I wasn't interested in her excuses. The manipulation was thick in the air, but I had seen enough. I'd heard it all. "No, Lydia, you didn't love me." My voice was like ice now, cold enough to freeze the air between us. "You loved the attention. You loved the escape. But you never thought about me. And now you're crying because your little fairy tale with Mark is over, and I'm the bad guy." She stepped toward me, tears still flowing, but I didn't move. "Please, I messed up. I know that. But I can't lose you. I need you." "You don't get to need me now," I said, my words sharper than I intended. "You had me. I was here giving you everything. And you threw it away for what? A fling with a guy who'll never treat you the way I did? Do you even know how disgusting that is? To throw everything away for a few laughter-filled text messages?" Lydia stopped in front of me, her chest heaving. "I don't know what happened, but I can fix it. We can fix it. Just give me the chance. I'll prove to you that I could be the wife you always wanted. Please don't leave me." I shook my head, stepping back. "I don't need you to prove anything. I need you to face what you've done. You've broken me, Lydia. But more than that, you've shattered any trust one had in you. And I'm not going to sit here and let you try to play the victim in this." She felt her knees in front of me, her voice cracking. "I'm sorry. I never meant for it to get to this point." I looked down at her, my heart hardening with every word. Sorry doesn't fix this. Sorry doesn't take back the lies or the betrayal. Sorry doesn't erase the fact that I was your husband and you threw me aside for someone else. "No, Lydia, this is over." For a moment, there was silence. She was still on her knees, her sobs filling the room. I should have felt pity. I should have felt sorry for the woman I had once loved. But I didn't. I felt nothing but the weight of the finality of my decision. "You can cry all you want, but this is it," I said. "You can beg, you can plead, but you've already made your choice. Mark was your choice, and now I'm making mine." She looked up at me, her face a picture of disbelief. "What are you going to do?" I smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. It wasn't a forgiving smile. It was the smile of a man who had been betrayed, who had finally taken control of his own life again. "I'm walking away, Lydia. You can't fix this. You don't get to fix this." And with that, I turned and walked out the door, leaving her behind, alone with her choices. That I spent the next few days moving through a fog of anger and satisfaction. Lydia had tried to reach out, of course. Texts, phone calls, even a few desperate messages on social media. But I ignored it all. I didn't need any more excuses or false promises. She had shown me who she really was, and I was done. She called my friends, too, asking them to talk to me, to help her fix things. Some of them were sympathetic. They told me I was being harsh, that maybe I should give her a chance to explain herself. But I didn't care. They didn't get it. They hadn't lived through the last year, the slow unraveling of my marriage. They didn't know how many times I had brushed off the warning signs, convincing myself it was just work stress or some weird phase she was going through. They didn't know how much of myself I had sacrificed for her, only to have her throw it all away. I was done with excuses, done with the lies. That's when I decided to take the final step, leaving. I didn't just pack a suitcase. No, I packed everything that mattered, everything I'd worked for. I took my clothes, my documents, my things, and left the rest behind. All the memories, the things we had built together. Let her keep it. I didn't need reminders of a marriage that was nothing but a sham. I found a small apartment not far from the house. It wasn't much, but it was mine. And the peace I felt when I locked that door behind me, it was the first real breath of air I'd taken in weeks. The phone calls kept coming. Lydia's voice grew more frantic with each message. But I knew there was nothing to say. She had made her choice, and so had I. And then came the final straw. Lydia had started posting on social media pictures of herself, trying to show the world she was fine, trying to pretend like she wasn't completely unraveling inside. I didn't care. But then I saw one post that made my stomach churn. A picture of Mark. The caption? "A new chapter. Red heart." I didn't know what I expected. I knew she'd try to move on. But the audacity of it all, the fact that she was flaunting their relationship after everything, made me sick. I spent the rest of the day pacing in my new apartment, the anger bubbling up again. I was done being the nice guy, done being the one who takes the emotional hits. I had let her get away with it long enough. I opened up my laptop and fired off one last message to her. This time, it wasn't just for me. It was for everyone who had been affected by her lies. I wrote, "Hey Lydia, I saw your post. I guess you and Mark are really something, huh? I just wanted to remind you that I'm not the only one you've hurt. It's not just me you've lied to. I know you think this is all over and you can just move on with your life, but the truth has a funny way of catching up with people. I've learned a lot from this, about you, about me, and about what I'll tolerate in the future. So, good luck with your new chapter. But just know this, no one forgets the damage you've done, no matter how many pretty pictures you post. Goodbye, Lydia, your ex-husband." I hit send and sat back in my chair, feeling the weight of the words. There was no going back now. I had laid it all out. No more hiding behind the curtain. No more pretending. I blocked her number, blocked her on every app, and just sat there in silence. The peace I had been craving for so long finally settled over me. But as the days passed, Lydia's silence became louder. No more calls. No more texts. No more desperate pleas. And you know what? It felt good. I wasn't worried about her anymore. I wasn't angry. I was free. I didn't need to make her feel the pain I had felt. She was already doing it to herself. The first few days in my new apartment were strange. Quiet. The kind of silence that feels like a void, like something's missing. I wasn't used to being alone. For years, Lydia had been the constant in my life. Even when things fell off, even when I questioned where we stood, I always had the illusion of having her there. Now, it was just me. But the more time I spent in that little place, the more I realized something. I didn't miss her. I didn't miss the drama, the lies, the gaslighting. I didn't miss waiting for her to come home late, smelling like perfume that wasn't mine, or hearing the fake excuses that never quite added up. I realized I was better off. I threw myself into work. At first, it was just a distraction, something to fill the hours that felt long and endless without her. But slowly, I started to find meaning in it again. My career had always been something I put on the back burner for our relationship. Lydia's needs came first. But now it was just about me. I started taking on new projects, working longer hours, and pushing myself harder than I ever had before. And it felt good. The first week alone was a blur of work and the occasional phone call with my friends. They checked in on me, making sure I was doing okay. They were worried. They wanted to know if I was still hurting, if I still thought about Lydia. Honestly, I didn't. That's not to say it was easy. The sting of betrayal didn't just disappear. There were moments, quiet moments, when I caught myself thinking about her, about the life we had built together. I had to remind myself how she had destroyed it, how she had chosen to tear everything apart for a fleeting affair with a man who had no respect for her, let alone me. But those moments got fewer and fewer. I began doing things for myself, things I hadn't done in years. I reconnected with old friends, went out for drinks, picked up hobbies I had abandoned. I even started going to the gym again, something Lydia had always rolled her eyes at. It felt good to feel strong again, to feel like I was in control of my own life. And then, a few weeks later, the final test came. I got a message from one of her old friends, Sarah. She had always been the one to stay neutral, never picking sides, always just there as a listening ear for Lydia. But now she was reaching out to me. I opened the message. Hey, I know things have been hard, and I don't know if you'll read this, but I just wanted to say I'm really sorry for everything. You didn't deserve what Lydia did to you. I hope you're doing okay. I stared at it for a moment. The words were kind, but I wasn't sure how to respond. There was still so much anger, still so many emotions tied to the mess Lydia had made of everything. But I took a deep breath and typed out a response. Thanks, Sarah. I'm doing okay. Honestly, I'm better than I've been in a while. I hit send and set my phone down. I realized something then. It wasn't just about moving on from Lydia anymore. It was about taking control of my life again. It was about finding my own peace, even if it meant walking away from people who had been part of my past. I didn't need to hate her. I didn't need to wish for her to feel the same pain I had felt. I was done. The rest of the night was quiet. I didn't think about Lydia. I didn't think about the betrayal. I just existed. And for the first time in months, it felt good to just exist without constantly carrying the weight of her lies on my shoulders. I realized then that I had already done what I needed to do. I had let go. And that was enough. That it wasn't just the absence of Lydia that started to feel right. It was the absence of her control over my life. For years, I had allowed my emotions to be tied up in her actions, my happiness hinging on whether she was faithful, whether she was happy, whether she was giving me the attention I thought I deserved. But now, without her, it was like I was finally free. Free from her expectations. Free from the constant games, the excuses, and the creeping doubts that had poisoned our relationship. I didn't realize how much I had been holding on to until it was gone. The weight of it was lifted, and as weeks passed, I started noticing things. Things I hadn't noticed in years. Little changes in myself. I started waking up in the mornings with clarity instead of dread. I could breathe without feeling like I was carrying a burden on my chest. I made plans without wondering if Lydia would approve. I made decisions based on what I wanted, not on some compromise for the sake of keeping the peace. I remembered how to laugh again, how to enjoy life without being dragged down by someone else's mistakes. But of course, Lydia wasn't just going to let me go without a fight. The first encounter, it had been almost 2 months since I left. I hadn't heard from her much. A few texts here and there, some social media posts, but nothing that made me waver. Nothing that made me doubt my decision. But then one day, I got a message. It was from Lydia's phone, but the text wasn't from her. I need to talk to you. It's important. It wasn't a request. It wasn't an apology. It was a command. I didn't respond immediately. I wasn't interested in rehashing the past. Wasn't interested in whatever new mess she was trying to drag me into. But after thinking about it for a while, I realized something. I was no longer afraid of her. I had moved on, and this was just her last attempt at control. So I replied, I don't think we need to talk. I'm done with you. I sat back, my fingers tapping the table, waiting for her response. A part of me expected her to beg, to pour her heart out again, but she didn't. She didn't even respond for a few days. And when she did, it was cold. Fine. If you don't want to talk, Then I guess I'll just have to figure this out myself. But I hope you know what you're giving up. I didn't respond, and I didn't feel a single thing. The revelation. It wasn't long after that message that I bumped into her literally. I was coming out of a coffee shop one evening when I almost collided with someone. I looked up and saw Lydia. I froze. My stomach twisted, but only for a moment. She looked different, not in the way I thought she would, but in the way that made it clear she wasn't the person I used to know. Her makeup was perfect, her clothes were new, but her eyes, those were the eyes of someone who had lost everything. For a second, neither of us said anything. It felt like the world was holding its breath. Then Lydia spoke first. "I see you've moved on," she said, her voice soft but sharp. She didn't smile, didn't even look like she cared. I nodded. "Yeah, I have. I think it's the best thing I've ever done for myself." She looked at me, really looked at me, and for the first time in years, I didn't see the woman I had loved. I saw someone who had spent too long pretending, someone who had lost their way. "I didn't want to lose you," she said, her voice cracking just slightly. I took a deep breath. This was it, the final moment, the one where I got to say everything I had wanted to say for months. "You did. You lost me the moment you decided I wasn't enough. The moment you thought you could get away with lying and cheating. The moment you chose him over me." Her face reddened, but she didn't argue. She didn't try to defend herself. She just stood there, silent, as if waiting for me to soften. But I didn't. "I'm not your second choice anymore," I said, feeling my voice steady. "I'm not anyone's backup, and I'm done letting you play games with my life." She nodded, her eyes glistening, but there was no apology. There was no regret in her gaze, just a hollow sadness that wasn't for me. It was for herself. I turned and walked away, and as I walked, I felt a strange kind of peace settle over me. It was the peace of knowing that I was finally free. Free from her, from the lies, from the past that had held me captive for too long. A new beginning. In the months that followed, Lydia faded into the background of my life. I kept moving forward. I met new people, made new friends, and slowly built the life I had always wanted. One where I wasn't held back by someone else's mistakes. I never did get any more messages from her. The silence was heavy at first, but eventually it became comforting. I didn't need her approval anymore. I didn't need anyone's approval. And as for Mark, I never bothered to check in on him. What he and Lydia had, that was their problem. I had enough of my own life to focus on. In the end, I realized that revenge wasn't about making her feel the same pain she'd caused me. It was about letting go. It was about moving on without looking back. And that's exactly what I did.